You are on record claiming this war has significantly weakened Iran.
Yeah.
But according to US intelligence, Iran still has 70% of its pre-war missile inventory, 90% of its underground missile storage, and of course, almost 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium. The US killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei and replaced him with, drum roll, Ayatollah Khamenei.
We think.
Well, they did replace him. You can say where he is. We can discuss that. The Iranians, much to Donald Trump's shock and surprise, weaponized the Strait of Hormuz, attacked US's Gulf allies, threw the global economy into disarray. In what fantasy world is this war close to a success?
Okay. So again, the four conditions, let's start with the ballistic missiles. The measure of the effectiveness of ballistic missiles is not how many you have, how many you possess, it's how many you can fire against an enemy in a militarily significant manner.
They just bombed US bases in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Jordan.
Yes.
You seem to believe, you've made statements that suggest, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you actually believe that Trump had humanitarian motives for this illegal and disastrous war. You have claimed that Trump's promise in January to help Iranian protesters who were being killed was the real reason for this war. And you said his aim in this war is, quote, punishing the people who carried out the massacres and ultimately avenging them, you said. To be clear, David DeRoche, you think Donald Trump gives a damn about the people of Iran? Really?
Okay, so first off, I'm very impressed that you pay attention to me as a married man. I don't get that very often. The predicate that you led with is false. What I said is true, that he said he was doing that. But I don't think, and Trump supporters and Trump detractors, I don't think his motivation is necessarily a humanitarian urge. I haven't seen any evidence that exists in it. It is his ego. Supporters and Trump detractors, I don't think his motivation is necessarily a humanitarian urge. I haven't seen any evidence that exists in it. It is his ego. He made a public statement that he was going to help the supporters. And having made that, he had to take some sort of action, not necessarily out of humanitarian urge, but rather because he did not want to be compared with Barack Obama's red lines in Syria.
But you would agree that you cannot, quote, avenge Iranians by killing more Iranians. 1,700 civilians killed in this US-Israeli war, according to the most credible study. They've hit a dozen hospitals, 60 universities, 300 healthcare facilities, 760 schools. They blew up a civilian bridge. On the first day of this war, as you know, the United States carried out what is probably a war crime by massacring more than 120 kids in an elementary school.
So first off, again, we will not know for sure what is it. I lived through the period of in the.
But there's no debate about the school.
Well, the school we can talk about.
In fact, let's talk about the school. In the days following the attack on the school, you were on Twitter casting doubt that a US strike was responsible for blowing up a school full of children in Minna. A preliminary US internal military investigation confirms it was a US missile. Do you now acknowledge that you were wrong, that the US was responsible for this horrific massacre?
Hold on. So first off, massacre implies intent. So what you're asking me to agree to is a statement that the people who dropped around in the context of 800 airstrikes, at the time, people were taking just the word of the regime. We didn't know what we knew then about missiles and swords.
So you accept you were wrong now?
I accept that I may be wrong. We do not know for sure.
You still don't know if you still think it might not be a US missile?
I think that it might, well, hold on. This is going to sound Jesuitical to you, but the word you used is massacre, which implies an element of intent. I think you will see that there were instances where the besieged moved from their headquarters into sports halls as sheltering positions.
This sounds like a very Israeli argument here, that they brought it on themselves with human shields.
That's not what I'm saying.
In fact, here's what you did say, David. You said on Twitter,
yes,
Wikipedia says the Minab School is located 600 meters from the headquarters of the IRGC Navy Asif Brigade and used to be part of the base.
Yes.
Which sounds like you're justifying the massacre of kids by saying, well, the military base was nearby, so it's their fault. I would point out to you that US Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia, is very close to the Crossroads Elementary School.
Yeah.
If the Iranians or one of their proxies, God forbid, bombed Crossroads Elementary School and said, well, it was the US Marine Corps' fault for building a base near the school, we would all condemn that. So would you, wouldn't you?
Well, first off, let's take a step back and assume that the United States deliberately wanted to kill children in a school. No, but let's just assume this. Let's just assume this, okay? Why would you assault a regional headquarters that has no influence on policy when you could kill the children of the regime leaders in Tehran? So clearly, it does not make sense if you assume the worst intent. But going forward, the size of the Quantico base or any other standard US versus the size of the Minab base are fundamentally different.
But all the evidence shows that it was very clear to anyone who bothered to check that this was a school, that it was separate from the base, and that's where the recklessness comes in.
Au contraire. Take a look at the area of...
There is a Church of England primary school just minutes away from the Bramcote military barracks in Nuneaton. Is that a war crime by the British Ministry of Defence to put their base near a primary school?
In the context of a conflict, if somebody does their due diligence, they attempt to prevent civilian casualties, and their target is an IRGC base, then it is a legitimate target. The collateral damage may be tragic, but the actual strike is completely legitimate.
Did you really come to a public gathering to refer to 120 dead kids as collateral damage?
Look, that might be it might be, I said the word tragic as well, but that is what it is.
Collateral damage, 120 Iranian kids killed.
Of course, that is collateral damage.
The reality is that there was no nuclear threat from Iran last year when we bombed them, or this year when we bombed them. When the Trump administration says we went to war to avert a, quote, I'm quoting, imminent nuclear threat, That is a lie from the United States government, is it not?
No. I think what you're probably referring to is the earlier intelligence estimate that said Iran is not seeking to build a nuclear weapon at this time.
Yes, and the IAEA.
And the issue, the key part there, everybody focuses on the first part and ignores the second part. Iran does have the capability to reconstitute, or did have the capability to reconstitute its nuclear program at a moment's notice. We know that they had one prior to 2003. They suspended it.
If your moment is a year, then yes. You were, with respect, a moment ago lecturing me on the meaning of the word massacre. Yes. I would say to you the meaning of the word imminent to most people is not years from now.
You can be massacre, I'll take it.
That was a lie from the Trump administration. And I'm quoting here, Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program. He hadn't changed his mind.
But the capability, the capacity, the
Capability
ability to do that.
You can't
Capability
call
is a threat.
imminent threat.
Imminent, we can argue over, but capability is a threat.
So let me ask you about where the president's going. Donald Trump wants to sign a deal. He wants to sign a deal that prevents Iran from getting highly enriched uranium, a deal, he says, in which they pledge never to build nuclear weapons.
Yes.
The US already had this deal. It was called the JCPOA, which I know you didn't like. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, said the deal was working. Iran